If you want to build bigger, stronger biceps like Taylor and Swift here while using your tonal, then you're in luck. I've got you covered because in today's edition of Tonal Hacks, I'm going to show you a better version of the standing bicep curl so you can build those bigger biceps that you want. Now, if you don't know who I am, I'm Coach Jackson, one of the original coaches. I worked at Tonal for 5 years, no longer work there anymore. However, I do know quite a bit about this machine because I not only created and started many of the most popular programs on Tonal, also helped create the exercise library, and I've also coached almost 500 people individually on the Tonal. So I know a few things about this machine. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna cover the standing bicep curl, and I'm gonna show you a better variation than you're currently doing. But before we get to that, it starts with a little bit of context, a little bit of an educational lesson, if you will. So let's start by breaking down the bicep curl and then talking a little bit about geometry. I know. If your head's about to explode, don't worry, I'm gonna break it down. Now, I got a degree in computer science, so I've done quite a bit of math in my day, but I'm gonna break it down, make it really simple and easy for you. So the first thing we wanna do is we wanna think about what is the bicep curl and how do we break that movement down? Well, the way we break any movement down, whether it's bicep curl, overhead press, or even chest press, is into two different parts. We talk about the shortening or the concentric portion of the rep. That's the lifting of the weight when you're doing a bicep curl. Same thing with a chest press. It's the shortening of your pecs. So shortening the muscle here, that's the concentric or the positive portion. The second part of the rep is gonna be the lengthened portion, the eccentric, the negative portion of the rep. So when you elongate the muscles, when you stretch them under load, that's the eccentric or the negative portion of the rep. So those are the two different parts of any given rep that we're gonna be doing, whether it's on Tonal, in a gym, anywhere. So now that we know that, a little bit more context, when it comes to building muscle, when it comes to hypertrophy, the eccentric or the negative portion of the rep is gonna be slightly more important than the positive. You're going to get more gains by focusing on the eccentric, going slow, going controlled on the eccentric, having at least a 2-3 second eccentric. Also, leveraging dynamic weight modes like eccentric mode, where you can overload the eccentric portion. That is gonna be key to building muscle, to hypertrophy. You're gonna get more gains by focusing on that than focusing on the positive or the concentric, the shortening of the rep. So if we know that, then we wanna maximize the bicep curl for the eccentric or the negative portion. Okay, so let's table that and keep that on the shelf. Now, let's talk about some basic geometry. When it comes to the standing bicep curl, the way you do the move on Tonal is you stand here, you face the Tonal, you get engrossed in this audio visual experience watching coaches like me do bicep curls and get all sweaty, and it's awesome, right? So we got this whole audio visual experience, and that's great. I love that for you. Heck, I love that for me. But the problem is that when we're facing the Tonal and we're doing the bicep curl like this, at the bottom, the eccentric, the stretched position at the bottom here, you could see the angle of the cable in relation to my arm. It's parallel, it goes right in line with my arm. It's, in fact, like an extension of my arm. So the problem is that there's no additional tension. There's no extra tension at the bottom in that fully stretched position. And this means we're not gonna get quite as good a gains as we possibly could if we were to tweak this exercise and optimize it for hypertrophy. So I'll quickly show you a couple of reps the old way, and then I'll show you a few reps the new way. All right, so I'm gonna turn the weight on, curl up, I'm gonna control on the way down, and then drive back up. Control on the way down, and drive back up. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with this exercise. It's a good exercise. You're gonna build bigger, stronger biceps using this exercise versus doing nothing at all, of course. But if we could make the exercise better, if we're already spending the time, if we're already here playing with the Tonal, doing our thing, we might as well make it even better. So instead of facing the Tonal, and again, having no stretched load on the bicep, what we wanna do is we wanna flip around. We wanna face away from Tonal. So now, boom, we're looking away from Tonal. Now, look at the angle in relation to my arm. If I walk out a few steps, I have an angle that's closer to perpendicular. This isn't quite 90 degrees, of course, but it's closer to 90 degrees than it was previously. It's getting closer. So as I walk out a few steps and I get into this position, now when I go into the eccentric or negative portion of the rep, I'm gonna get a better stretch. I'm gonna get more peak load on my bicep in that fully stretched position. And that's going to lead to better pumps and better muscle hypertrophy. Here's the thing, put it to the test. Try it yourself. I've done this with my private clients and I've showed them this and they're like, Jackson, this is unbelievable. I can't believe the pumps that I'm getting from a simple tweak in the exercise. So instead of facing the tonal, flip around, face away from the tonal, walk a few steps out, then follow all of your cues. Head tall, shoulders back, chest out, elbows locked in at your side, slow and controlled on the eccentric, and you're gonna experience far better pumps. Now I'll do a quick demonstration, and at the end, I'm gonna show you one other little tweak or hack that you can do that can make this even better. So you might wanna stick around. So let's get into this exercise. Now I'm facing away from tonal. I'm gonna walk out. Now there's two variations on this. You can either do this with your feet parallel, this is one way, or you can do it with a staggered stance. Now parallel, there's nothing wrong with this, but from a balance perspective, you might wanna lean forward a little bit, and if the weight starts to get pretty heavy, you might struggle with your balance a little bit. So I'm gonna go with a slightly staggered stance here. I'm gonna walk out a few steps, keep my elbows locked in at my side here, and notice they're slightly towards the back of my rib cage here, almost in line with my lats. Now I turn on the weight, I feel that stretch. Now I go into my curl, keep my elbows back, and holy cow, does that feel a lot different, and of course, a lot better because I'm getting that full stretch. I'm getting the eccentric load in the place that it matters, which is in that fully stretched position. Squeeze at the top, control, control, control. Last one, control, control, control. And look at this. Again, look at the angle of the cable in relation to my arm here in that fully stretched position. Now I'm getting some serious load on my bicep, as opposed to even if I stood back here, facing away from tonal. I'm not getting the same level of resistance on the bicep in that stretch position. And that's why doing the exercise this way, facing away from tonal, taking a few steps out, is gonna be so much more effective than doing it the traditional way. So that is the tonal hack. But I told you I had one more little bonus tip for you. So if you really wanna get nuts, and this can be a little inconvenient because if you're doing a workout on tonal and it requires you to, let's say, go from bench press to bicep curl to overhead press, you don't want to fiddle with the arms too much. So I understand why this might be a little inconvenient. However, if you're a maximizer like moi, like I am, then let's make one more adjustment. Let's elevate these arms. So I'm gonna elevate the arms here, move them in slightly. I'm gonna elevate this arm as well. Now in terms of moving them in slightly, that's just a preference. You can keep them out a little bit further. That's still okay as well, but I like to move them in just a little bit. So I'm gonna move these arms in slightly. Now I'm gonna get them in this position here. So now, if you look at the angle of the cable in relation to my arm, in this peak stretch position, well, I have a perfect perpendicular angle. Remember, geometry lesson. This is a perpendicular angle. So now, perpendicular right angle, 90 degrees between the cable and my arm. Now I have max resistance at the point that it matters most from a hypertrophy perspective. Remember, we're trying to max gains here, max hypertrophy, build the biggest biceps that we possibly can so we can give them names like Taylor and Swift. What are the names of your biceps? I hope they have names, because if they don't, you're not gonna get as much growth as you could, because it's through cultivating that very special relationship with your biceps that you get growth. And of course, applying hacks like this as well. So again, let's get back on track here and let me show you this final version of the exercise. So in this final version of the exercise, I'm gonna stand out here. Again, I got that staggered stance. My chest is slightly hinged forward, as you can see. Elbows are back. Now I turn this weight on. Holy cow, does that feel different? Curl, control on the way down. Curl, control on the way down, and you can hear me grunt. And that's because this is definitely harder than the previous version was. I'm gonna do 2 more reps. And notice I'm not swinging my elbows, I'm not swinging my chest. As Tony Horton would say, there's no body English. Control, last one, and let it down. Holy cow. Now the reason that works so well is, again, because the eccentric or negative portion of the rep is slightly more important from a hypertrophy perspective. And also you can resist more load on the eccentric or negative portion. So that's why optimizing the rep to have the peak amount of resistance in the stretch position is gonna help you build more muscle faster than optimizing the rep for having the most amount of resistance at the top of the movement. So I'm Coach Jackson. Please apply this tonal hack, comment below, let me know how you like it. And remember, action is the difference between dreaming and succeeding.